mean, Pat, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. But let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures. And look at her track record. How many times does she have to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology for all the stuff that she said on the show?
Sunny Hostin, well known for her candid perspectives on social justice, legal matters, and pop culture on The View, had long been a trusted voice for viewers who respected her legal acumen and thoughtful commentary. For years, her expertise as a former prosecutor brought depth to the panel's discussions, lending a sense of credibility to the show's coverage of current events. However, neither Sunny nor her loyal audience anticipated the abrupt shock that came when her husband was arrested under a far-reaching RICO, Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act investigation. Speculation began when rumors surfaced that authorities had raided offices tied to Sunny's husband's business ventures. Shortly afterward, multiple headlines broke the news of an alleged involvement in financial improprieties, racketeering, and fraud.
I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
While details at first were scarce, the media latched onto every available tidbit, repeatedly emphasizing phrases like organized scheme. Local news stations replayed footage of her husband in handcuffs, and the internet exploded with theories, commentary, and social media discussions dissecting the allegations. As the public tried to understand the complexities of a RICO case, it also grappled with a more personal dimension, Sunny's standing on The View and how the scandal might affect it. Rumors circulated that network executives were uneasy. Because Sunny had built her entire career on a platform of legal integrity, critics questioned how her spouse's legal difficulties might reflect on her.
It always comes back to them, all right? So when you said this is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York, you guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia case. Like the mafia one was number one. This one takes it over. So he was scamming insurance companies from taxi drivers, Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers. He was performing unnecessary surgeries and then providing fraudulent medical services in exchange for the kickback.
Although Sunny herself had zero recorded involvement in her husband's alleged misconduct, some argued that the optics were damaging. Others countered that blaming her for what her husband allegedly did was both unfair and unprecedented, especially given her spotless professional record. Initially, Sunny returned to her seat at The View with a brave face. Yet, viewers noticed how the show's atmosphere had changed. Co-hosts seemed hesitant to discuss her personal challenges, and the usual banter took on an uneasy tone whenever legal controversies came up. Online, the conversation grew louder, with critics posting under hashtags demanding Sunny's removal and supporters protesting that she should remain.
I've been waiting my whole life for this one. Orthopedic surgeon and husband for The View host Sunny Hostin has been named in a federal lawsuit alleging insurance fraud. She got on television. She got in. These women tell me why her husband is named in a lawsuit in insurance fraud, and I'm gonna show you exhibit. Let me say exhibit B. Can you show this to the jury? Roll it, Nick.
Doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance. And they're talking about threatening him with insurance fraud. I would say you could get about 20 years in prison, so that's a death sentence for him.
Network decision-makers, meanwhile, weighed the potential risks to the show's credibility. Behind the scenes, producers became increasingly concerned. In particular, they worried that certain guests might be reluctant to appear if they believed the conversation would inevitably veer toward the swirling legal scandal. They also worried the show's focus would shift from current events and entertainment to a spotlight on Sunny's personal life. Given that Sunny had always been forthright when analyzing legal cases, this situation carried an ironic twist. The very analysis and integrity she had built her career upon were now being questioned because of her partner's alleged wrongdoing.
According to a new lawsuit obtained by Page Six, the orthopedic surgeon was one of 200 defendants named in one of the biggest racketeer influence and corrupt organization cases ever filed in New York. Emmanuel was accused of federal insurance fraud and, quote, getting kickbacks by performing surgery and billing a company that insured taxi companies and Uber and Lyft drivers.
Eventually, an internal memorandum hinted at a possible suspension or hiatus, fueling media reports that Sunny might be canceled. Officially, the network insisted Sunny was taking time away to deal with serious private legal matters. Observers wondered whether this was a temporary strategy or a prelude to more permanent changes. At the same time, sources close to the show reported that new revelations might emerge, deepening the allegations against Sunny's husband. Speculation grew that these revelations could implicate a broader circle of medical professionals and affiliated businesses. The lawsuit's scope added to the headlines. It was alleged that a sprawling conspiracy existed, involving nearly 200 defendants, all caught in a network of racketeering designed to defraud insurance companies through unnecessary medical procedures or phantom billing. The center of the suit concerned orthopedic surgeries, particularly arthroscopic operations that are normally deemed beneficial for certain joint problems. According to the insurer bringing the suit, many of these procedures had been conducted on patients who did not truly need them. The alleged motive was profit. Collect payments from insurers for surgeries that brought in significant reimbursements. Phantom billing, charging an insurer for a medical service never performed, came up repeatedly in the claims. If proven, such conduct would be unequivocally fraudulent. When a RICO case is filed, the plaintiffs must show a pattern of illegal activity and an organized enterprise designed to carry out those actions. For medical practitioners, such allegations carry serious consequences. A guilty verdict under RICO can result in both steep financial penalties and potential prison time. Observers noted how RICO statutes, once primarily aimed at organized crime syndicates, have been used more frequently against white-collar and insurance fraud, especially when broad networks are alleged. From the defense perspective, the lawsuit was seen as a ploy by the insurer to recoup losses and fortify its own financial position. They argued that high-volume medical procedures sometimes trigger insurer scrutiny, and that insurance companies often balk at paying even legitimate claims. Advocates for the defendants insisted that the insurer might be struggling financially and now sought to label normal medical practices as fraudulent. They maintained that the procedures in question were performed on patients genuinely in need of intervention, and that documentation could support this stance. As time passed, the media's focus shifted between the legal nuts and bolts of the case and the personal angle involving Sunny. Some speculated whether she had any knowledge of the business dealings at the center of the allegations. Others believed a spouse could easily remain unaware of intricate billing practices, especially if those practices involved highly technical aspects of medicine and insurance coding. In many households, day-to-day business transactions are not always shared in detail, especially if one partner has a separate professional sphere. Regardless, the public seemed fixated on Sunny's every move. Was she still wearing her wedding ring on camera? Had she issued statements defending her husband's innocence? Critics demanded she speak out, while supporters called on them to respect her privacy until the courts provided clarity. Social media became a battleground. Some insisted her legal background implied she must have known something. Others contended that blame for alleged wrongdoing belongs squarely with the responsible party, her husband, if the accusations prove correct. Simultaneously, the broader conversation about healthcare ethics took center stage. Many recognized that in a fee-for-service model, doctors earn money for every procedure performed. This can create an inherent conflict of interest, as there is a financial incentive to do more, not less. If the insurer's allegations proved accurate, it would mean that some medical professionals had profited from needless operations, subjecting patients to surgery with all its associated risks, an outcome that deeply unsettled the public. Conversely, if the defense was right, then insurers might be vilifying legitimate procedures to avoid substantial payouts. Such tension has existed for decades, with insurance companies and medical providers often at odds over coverage decisions, reimbursements, and the classification of necessity for certain treatments. As the months wore on, the case gained notoriety beyond typical medical fraud lawsuits, in large part due to Sunny's platform on The View. Many watchers of daytime television might not ordinarily examine the complexities of orthopedic procedures or insurance litigation. Yet now, they found themselves reading about technical terms like phantom billing, kickbacks, and arthroscopic surgeries. Lawsuit documents were scrutinized, and legal analysts debated the standard of proof for RICO in civil cases, usually a preponderance of the evidence, which is lower than the criminal requirement of beyond a reasonable doubt. Despite the noise, no direct links emerged implicating Sunny personally in any wrongdoing. She continued to maintain that she was not involved in her husband's practice. Yet, the possibility remained that any spouse of a defendant might inadvertently become embroiled in legal strategy or depositions. If the claims contained references to shared finances, real estate holdings, or bank accounts, it could further complicate Sunny's situation. Legal experts pointed out that it was entirely possible for her to have never participated in or benefited from any questionable billing. Still, gossip circulated that those behind the scenes at The View and the network were monitoring the case closely, ready to respond to new details as needed. The RICO angle itself demanded that the plaintiffs show something resembling an enterprise, with patterned, repeated acts of racketeering. With nearly 200 defendants, the suggestion was that multiple offices or facilities allegedly collaborated to carry out the scheme. Prosecutors or the suing insurer, depending on whether criminal charges eventually followed the civil suit, would have to prove these parties acted in concert. Experts emphasized that large-scale conspiracies require evidence such as group meetings, shared financial arrangements, or consistent patterns of fraudulent billing. If each defendant acted independently, proving a unified enterprise would be harder. Nevertheless, the insurer's legal team evidently believed it had sufficient data to craft this narrative. Meanwhile, if the defense attorneys found no evidence of systematic wrongdoing, they could argue that the case was a misguided or malicious attempt to recoup funds. In that scenario, each patient file would need to demonstrate legitimate procedures, medically justified reasons, and proper coding. The success or failure of such a defense often hinges on the expertise of medical and billing professionals brought into court to testify. Should the evidence tip in favor of the doctor, such that each procedure was shown to be necessary, then the entire structure of the fraud claim might collapse. As for personal ramifications, the indicted surgeon faced not only the possibility of severe legal penalties, but also the potential destruction of professional reputation. Even allegations of insurance fraud can be deeply damaging, leading to professional board inquiries and the loss of patient trust. Colleagues in the medical community often adopt a cautious approach, avoiding direct public statements until facts are clearer. Patients, too, can be left in limbo, unsure if their own medical treatments were part of a legitimate plan or potential wrongdoing. Commentators noted that it is not unusual for insurers and healthcare providers to engage in lengthy disputes. Yet the magnitude of this particular case, with allegations of a coordinated scheme spanning multiple offices, was especially noteworthy. By filing under RICO, the plaintiffs signaled that they viewed it as a complex and organized operation rather than just one doctor's alleged misconduct. This type of litigation can drag on for years, with extensive discovery, multiple depositions, and a costly legal process. The personal toll on everyone involved, from the indicted professionals and their families to the patients who may be called to testify, can be staggering. For Sunny, all of this unavoidably loomed in the background. Even when she was not on the show, updates about the case continued to surface online and in tabloid publications. People speculated on whether she would return to The View, if she might make a public statement, or if her hiatus would extend indefinitely. Some fans rallied behind her, insisting she deserved grace in a situation not of her own making. Others stayed firmly entrenched in skepticism, demanding transparency and quick answers about what happened. Like many public figures, Sunny found herself both supported and scrutinized in equal measure. Network executives, for their part, had to consider the show's brand and audience loyalty. The View thrives on topical debate and personality-driven commentary. If controversy overshadowed the program's usual mix of segments, the producers risked losing the audience's trust. Yet, removing a popular co-host without a conclusive determination of involvement could spark a backlash, making them appear insensitive or overly reactive. They therefore tried to frame Sunny's temporary absence as respectful caution rather than a punitive measure. Another layer of discussion centered on how insurers and legal frameworks are sometimes used to prevent overtreatment. Medical professionals often argue that certain regulations and oversight measures can have a chilling effect on treatment, with doctors fearing lawsuits if they cannot demonstrate absolute necessity for each procedure. Critics retort that preventing fraud is indispensable, and strong legal tools like RICO help ensure that wrongful conduct is rooted out. The entire dynamic underscores a fundamental tension in U.S. healthcare, balancing the need for cost controls against the risk of underpaying or outright accusing providers who might be delivering valuable services. As the lawsuit progressed, media outlets debated whether this high-profile case would influence future healthcare fraud litigation. If the plaintiffs succeeded under RICO, it might embolden insurers to pursue similar strategies against other doctors or networks. Conversely, if the defendants prevailed, it could cast doubt on using RICO for civil cases in a medical context, reaffirming that not every irregular billing pattern amounts to organized conspiracy. Despite the swirl of rumors, no definitive resolution surfaced quickly. Civil suits involving large sets of defendants can take years, with potential settlements that might never be disclosed to the public. The legal back and forth, from motions to dismissed to motions for summary judgment, can fill entire dockets before any trial date is set. In parallel, a possible criminal investigation could evolve, depending on whether prosecutors believe the evidence meets the higher standard for criminal RICO charges. Meanwhile, each passing day brought new speculation in entertainment and news media about Sunny's situation, her husband's defense, and the potential fallout for one of daytime TV's most recognized figures. Ultimately, viewers and legal analysts alike understood that allegations do not equate to guilt. Yet, the court of public opinion is often less forgiving, especially when a household name is involved. Sunny's own stance, adamant that she had no connection to her husband's business affairs, sparked debate over how much a spouse can or should know about the other's professional dealings. The intricacies of medical billing and insurance reimbursements can indeed be opaque, even to spouses, particularly when a doctor's practice is large and specialized. The key question remained whether the indicted surgeon, along with others named in the lawsuit, had truly orchestrated a scheme to inflate revenue through unwarranted or fictitious procedures. If proven, it would be a clear betrayal of professional ethics. If unproven, it would be a harsh illustration of how medical professionals can become entangled in insurer tactics that seek to recoup funds by implying wrongdoing. As the story unfolded, it served as a case study in modern media coverage and the consequences of mixing high-stakes legal matters with personal celebrity. Sunny's brand of forthright legal commentary clashed with the reality that her spouse was now on the receiving end of the legal system she used to champion. Regardless of how the lawsuit might ultimately resolve, it highlighted the precarious balance between professional integrity, personal relationships, and the potent forces driving the healthcare industry. Trust in medical practitioners and insurers alike was tested, as was faith in the neutral application of justice. For now, the full truth and final outcome remain tied to the courts. Each new procedural step, discovery, depositions, expert testimonies, could shift public perception and the lawsuit's trajectory. Whether Sunny returns to her place on The View unaffected, or whether the scandal leaves a lasting impact, depends on what emerges in the months and years ahead. The RICO allegations, combined with the family's public profile, ensure this dispute will remain under a spotlight, illustrating how quickly the tables can turn when private issues become national headlines.